Lance, what's up, bro?
Rhett, dude, this is a little bit different for us today.
Yeah, we're on a nighttime after work. We thought we would, what do we want to call it? Is it a disclaimer or it's more of just an announcement before this next podcast?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of a disclaimer. I just want to be like, say what's going on. You know,
Yeah.
what are we
So
doing here?
a lot of people ask me, dude, why do you have explicit on the podcast? And I tell them it's because when I set up the podcast on Spotify, they're really careful about anything that you talk about that could trigger emotional trauma, things like that. And I'm like, well, mostly working with therapists, so all kinds of topics can come up, right? That
Yeah,
trigger.
totally.
So I want to be respectful for the community. It's not that you and I are bantering around in really graphic ways. It's just that we want people to be aware of, hey, you might walk into a conversation about sexuality or about abuse. And yesterday, we walked into our first conversation around psychedelics. And
Yes,
I know that's controversial in um, all kinds of therapeutic communities, whether you come from a faith background or not a faith background.
yes, and like even for me personally, I did psychedelics back in the day when I was a kid, and they had a really bad impact on me. And so for me, like when psychedelics come up, it's always this like, like what's going to happen? I still feel that way. I'm thankful for some of the good stuff that's happening with psychedelics, but there's also this part of me that's really has a lot of questions. So even in this episode, I just want to be like for us to know, like I'm really thankful for where Ryan's story, and I think we try and bring it back to the truth. And gosh, that guy is just Ryan's amazing.
Ryan's an amazing guest. I've
You
known
guys
him
are up for something good today.
for like 15 plus years. When he was really young, his youth pastor connected him to me, and we started like chatting over the phone about the therapy. And he was in ministry. He trained at Fuller under Terry. He's level 2 trained. He's got a practice, does great work. And so he was phenomenal to talk to. But I think we just thought, hey, in the RT community is pretty mixed on a lot of things.
Yep.
And you and I doing the RT dialogue, we want to be, we bring a lot of people on who are practicing RT strictly and those who aren't.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that whatever Lance and Rhett talk about doesn't mean that's Terry or Sharon.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, we don't actually know where we stand on these things. And
On a
if you
lot of
ask us
stuff.
5 years from now, we'll probably have different stances. But this is why we call it RT dialogue and not RT decrees.
Yes. And we
So
want to, I think at the end of the year, we had some interesting conversations with some people in the RT community this weekend with Terry, where he put on the board basically, these are the fundamentals of RT, and we want to talk about those. But I think you and I, our heart is to bring people on either the edge of RT who are practicing in different ways, and people outside the community,
yeah.
because we want to. You and I think, have a heart to engage mindfully around a lot of different topics that can be controversial at times.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean we're therapists. We have no choice. It's going to come in the room, and we have to figure out a way to talk about this stuff. So I
Yeah.
hope everybody
So
enjoys this episode.
yeah, and Ryan, when you hear this prompt, you'll be like, "Wait, what? How come I got the first disclaimer?" And I told Lance we could have put a disclaimer on a lot of episodes. We just thought,
I
"Wow,
really
this is a
wish,
really
yeah, I
huh?"
wish we had put one in front of the one where I talked about having nocturnal emissions. That would have been a good one. That was
we,
really embarrassing for me.
uh, yeah, and we just thought this is such a powerful episode of someone's experience, and I want people to hear it. And sometimes in our communities, when we don't understand things or we have different positions, we don't always listen. And I loved having Ryan on, super thoughtful. And I could picture you and him mountain climbing together in the future. I could see that happening.
I hope so. I hope
Yeah,
so.
yeah. All right. Well, anything else you want to say about that? I'm excited. People tune in episode 42. Ryan's an awesome guest, and we had a good time.
I kind of like this kind of like get the episode before the episode moment. Kind of fun. We'll see if we do it again. It's a lot of work, but you never know.
Yeah. All right, Lance. We'll chat soon, man. See ya.
Enjoy the episode, guys.
Yep. Take care. Bye. Lance, what's going on?
Rhett, how you doing, my brother?
I'm good. We just saw each other in person here all weekend, so it's good to catch up again.
And we got to share the same room together.
Yeah, we did.
It was an experience.
It was good. I brought my earplugs, so
yeah. The surgery didn't work, guys. I guess I still snore. Oh wow.
It's all good. Hey, a couple things, Lance. I got more questions from people like, "Hey, what is Substack? Why do you have the RT dialogue on Substack?" And I was like, "Okay, essentially, it's an online writing platform that we have decided to just push this podcast and to do announcements and for people to write articles. So if you are listening and not subscribed, head over to the RT Dialogue Substack. It will be in the show notes. We have like 150 subscribers. I was looking this morning. It gets like 6,000 views a month. So people are looking at different things. And we just kind of want to grow that audience as a central hub to push out information, announcements, connect people. We have different regional groups that are growing a lot. There's a regional group here in Texas that I meet with once a month online that we'll have to talk to our guest about. There's ones in California, Ohio, New York, East Coast, etc. So, and you have some announcements.
Yeah. By the way, I still am trying to figure out what Substack is too. So
okay.
this is I'm on it and I'm still figuring it out. But
it's free too, by the way. We're not doing the paid platform. So don't worry. Anyone can subscribe for free.
Yes. This is good stuff. So we do have some level 1 trainings coming up, which I want to mention to y'all. With some of the people we just got to hang out with. Like Jason Wilkinson up in Oregon is doing one January 9th through the 10th, a level 1 training in person. We're really stoked for that. And then January 23rd through the 24th, whatever that means. We have Michael Cox coming in Austin, Texas. You know anything about Austin, Texas, Ryan?
I know nothing about Austin.
That's good. You got to learn, bro. You got to learn. And then, I doubt this one needs much of a plug, but Terry is going to be doing one in February the 20th through the 21st online. So those are some level 1 trainings. We have level 2 trainings that are full right now. You have to get on them really quick. I think the next one is sometime in the middle of the year. So anyways, I've made my announcements.
All right. Well, I'm going to introduce our guest. It's a guy I've actually known for a long time. It's funny how I meet people in therapy communities who we kind of connect in the past, and everyone kind of has their own I can't even say the word. I'm not going to say it. Everyone has their roundabout journey to becoming a therapist that I find always interesting. And so we have on today Ryan Forsell. I hope I say that right, Ryan, who is the founder and clinical director of the essentially Praxis, which is a marriage and family group in Sierra Madre. Also, I think probably Houston, Texas at the moment as well. So Ryan, welcome to the podcast here.
Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for having me today. It's great to be with you both.
Did I say Forsell right? You say it for me.
Yeah. Forsell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The running joke in high school. Yeah, the running joke in high school is if you have to ask, you can't afford me.
Oh. Wow. Dang. That's good.
Hey, that's a good.
I told you high school was a low, so I had to be witty, you know?
Yeah,
that's
we were saying earlier. Go ahead.
No, it's a good line for a therapist too, right?
Yeah.
If you have to ask, you can't afford me.
Yeah.
Sorry. We're way off the tracks early.
Well, this is going to be a good episode, though. Why is it going to be a good episode, Rhett?
Because I've known Ryan actually off and on for a while. Ryan grew up in Phoenix area, which is where I grew up. And we connected via a mutual friend way back in the day and started having some phone conversations about therapy. And Ryan made his way out to Fuller eventually, trained there at Fuller, Terry, RT, done level 1, level 2, and he's on his own journey and exploring some new things. So that's why it's going to be good. Ryan, tell us about, if you will, just kind of your journey to the therapy world? Because I know you started off in ministry also.
Yeah, yeah. What a meandering journey it has been, as it is for many of us, right? I started in ministry, kind of took a shotgun approach to ministry, and dabbled a little bit in everything, from missions to youth ministry, and so did a bunch of inner city work, where I really just fell in love with the ability to have these one-on-one conversations and take people through deeper experiences of who they are, what their community looks like, what their growth journey looks like. So ironically got to a point where I really didn't want to be working in ministry anymore. I didn't know what to do. And yeah, our mutual friend was talking you up one day, and it's like, man, I got to connect with this guy and see what this whole therapy thing's about. So I think, right, we connected, and you shared a little bit about your experience. And I jumped into a community mental health job because I didn't want to go get another degree that I don't use. So I figured, let me try this out a little bit.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, more of us should do that. But instead, I have an undergrad that I very much use, but I'm still paying for, and not in a ministry context. But then ultimately went to Fuller, got my MFT, and have had, like Rhett was saying, had a bunch of experiences in the RT world. Got to train underneath Terry for a little while, while simultaneously continuing to do community mental health and be in inner city work. I really have a heart for that stuff.
Which group are you
and
with?
then I was working with Hathaway Sycamores at the time. I think they're just called
Shout
Sycamores now. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Drop the Hathaway.
That was a wild time. Mm-hmm. Wild time. I have stories of teenagers kicking out my car windshield,
nice,
knives being pulled on me. I had a gun pulled on me one time. It was, I mean, they're like intense stories, but man, I felt so much more alive than the humdrum of adulthood makes you feel. So I dabbled in the community mental health world and started building a private practice underneath that. Did that for a couple years. Do not recommend this, but I think at the peak of that, I was doing 50 to 60 client hours a week.
Wow.
And that was rough. And eventually pivoted out of that into private practice, did the solo practice for a while, then started building a group practice, and have been dabbling in that world ever since. So it's kind of a crash course in what life has looked like.
Well, in your degree, I think I've a philosophy undergrad at Azusa, right?
Yeah, it was philosophy and Christian ministry.
That philosophy is going to come in handy, I think, for you in this new journey we're going to get into. I'm still thinking about 50 to 60 hours a week.
That doesn't even make sense to me. Did you have a day off?
No. So I did, Hathaway was my 9 to 5, and then I had like a 5:30 to 11 p.m. like doing therapy in private practice. So I would do my 40 hours in Hathaway, and then I was doing about 30 hours of private practice on top of that. My wife was in grad school, so I figured she was getting her doctorate. I might as well just work.
Wow.
So
it's impressive. What was she studying?
Physical therapy.
Oh, that's good.
That doesn't leave a lot of time for the outdoors stuff, Ryan.
No, I told you guys, my museum, or my garage, is a museum to the man I used to be.
I think that would be a great chapter book in a book.
Pardon?
The garage is the museum to the man I used to be.
That would be. There's many metaphors to pull out of that.
Tell us a little bit about, I don't know, I'm just like thinking through there's a lot of people we've talked to, Lance and I being also the kind of transition from ministry world to like therapy, counseling.
Yeah.
What was the, I don't know, the pivot for you or the deciding moment that you kind of wanted to transition from that to this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that it was one specific aha moment. I think ministry was wearing me out in some ways. I tend to do extremes, so I was unbalanced. Um, but maybe the final straw to that was the anticipatory anxiety of having to prep a sermon every week. It just felt like I had to do a book report every week, and I really disliked that.
Yeah.
So maybe it was kind of there was a lot of, I hit a handful of community traumas that were happening in the church. A couple people took their lives in the community, and really just heartbreaking things. And I think the way all of that aligned, I was just like, I need a pivot. So, it's all right. I mean, I think that happens for all of us who find ourselves listening to people's heaviness, right? My one good friend and colleague, Brian James, which Rhett, you guys connected?
Brian and I tried to connect here when he was driving through town on the way to a conference. So we are a work in progress to connect here. Yes.
He is a busy man, so it makes sense.
We should do a shout out to him right now. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian James. He talks about this really beautiful idea of holding people's heavy. And when we hold people's heavy, we're bound to experience really terrible stories of heartache and loss. And both in my personal life, but in my practice, we talk often about trauma work. I'm starting to recognize the value of grief work in our world that doesn't know how to grieve very well.
Yes.
So there's been a long journey of descent for me in that domain.
Wow. It's like we had so many topics that we were talking about in the beginning that we wanted to do. And I'm trying to figure out, like,
just go where you're feeling it, Lance.
I'm just wondering, like, if we should figure out, like, like, I've just been trying to figure this out.
Oh gosh,
like
the men's piece.
That was one option. Was trying to figure that out.
Oh man,
the other
that's a big piece.
Yeah, I mean, we could jump down that road. We could also go down. I mean, grief. We haven't really hit that well on the podcast. I don't think we've hit it that much. And Terry does have some really interesting pieces on that we could talk about.
Well,
and what would be better?
You frame it as if they're two separate things, but my experience of men's work is
how dare you?
It is grief work.
To be a man is to grieve, Lance. Tell me more, Ryan.
What's his name? Robert Bly has this beautiful quote. Oh, I'm gonna butcher this. He has this beautiful quote of essentially about how one of the main tasks of becoming a man is becoming reacquainted with our grief. And he kind of goes on to talk about the idea that when we don't choose to descend into grief, the hand of depression will reach up and grab us and pull us under. And so this idea that it's either something we choose to face and lean into, or it's something that just hijacks us. And I really love the way he paints that picture. I'll have to look up that quote for you guys.
No, I mean, Lance, jokingly, if you're not watching video, is holding up an old book I wrote on men, like in 2013, and it's short. I wrote it short enough because I figured a guy could read it real quickly, right?
It's great. It's like 3 pages a chapter. There's
some things I would change, but it did lead me down that path, Ryan, of a lot of this men's work and people like Robert Bly and diving much more into some of the work of Richard Rohr, like
Mm-hmm.
Wild Man's Journey was a book that
Yeah.
I like really changed my life and how I see
Mm-hmm.
things, you know. And um, I, I mean, I have a lot of men coming into my office. Is that your two's experience?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
not a lot of male therapists out there, like, so um
Mm-mm.
and good male therapists is even like
Yeah.
harder. Um
Yeah.
so yeah, it's huge.
It's huge. And I think that's in the water we're swimming in right now, right? Like you look around and increasingly in our world, there's more conversations being had of, hey, what happened to the boys and the men in our world? And kind of zooming out and looking at the women's movement had a lot of really beautiful things that happened in a lot of really powerful ways that it shaped society. And one of the things that I think has been lost is what is the male role in our world. And so much of the work of men coming in into my office trying to figure out up from down with this idea of essentially it's not okay to be me, right? Like
Mm.
particularly in LA, I'm having so many conversations of guys saying, I don't think I'm allowed to have an opinion. I'm a white, educated, straight guy who wants to hear from me. Um, and I think men have really lost their place in our world. And so I think that's why grief work is so intimately tied, because the idea of what, for right or wrong, there were definitely some things that we needed to let go of, but
Oh, come on, somebody.
the roles that men used to hold in society have shifted, and we've done the deconstruction, we have not reconstructed anything of substance. And so I think men are floating, and we all feel that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's like, I mean, if we're this is an RT dialogue. So I'm even thinking from like the RT, like it hits both dynamics, right? From like the two core things that we need, and when we look at restoration therapy, is, you know, love, which connects to identity, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then trustworthiness, which connects to safety, and
Mm-hmm.
all those areas are being smashed for
Yeah.
men. It sounds like, from what I'm hearing. Um, so, this idea of like our worth, this idea of
Mm-hmm.
like our belonging, this idea of, our uniqueness,
Yeah.
maybe we had a higher destructive entitlement, like our privilege may have
Mm-hmm.
made it thought that we automatically get things as men. Um, I don't know. But certainly on that end of things got messed up. And then
Mm-hmm.
on the right side, you even point up, with the trustworthiness and safety, right? This idea around fairness, is certainly being stretched. This
Mm-hmm.
idea around predictability, like the world that we used to know is no longer there. So that's being stretched. And then openness, right? Can
Mm-hmm.
I share? Can I be open? Can I be real? That all those things are, being violated, and
Yeah.
today for today's man. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And I don't want to paint like a one-sided conversation in that, right? Like women definitely continue to have their fair struggles in our world, but
Really,
gener
women have struggled
yeah,
all along.
one or two struggles.
Men are like, oh, this is what it's like to have a tough time.
But the interesting paradigm of, culturally speaking, guys, we're just not uh, really taught emotional vocabulary. We don't do interpersonal relationships, right? Growing up, our play is shoulder to shoulder,
Yeah.
kind of go do something. And and what I found about the therapy space is so often, talking about love and trustworthiness. So often therapy is this conversation of, hey, I'm a safe space. I want to create safe space for people. And I think what I've been discovering is, especially for guys, we don't need safe spaces. We need brave spaces, right? Spaces where we can show up. And most of the guys I'm working with, they don't want me to hold space for them. They want me to challenge them to figure out how to talk in more meaningful ways about their experience. And this interesting paradigm, Michael Mead talks about this idea that men can only be initiated into manhood by other men. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of beautiful things that women can do for men, but there are some key things around masculinity that only men can offer. And Lance, you touched on, there's just not a lot of us male therapists out there.
Yeah.
And I see that as kind of problematic, because I'll listen to my women colleagues who have really wonderful perspective on how to move someone through their pain, right? And move towards some safety and some connection. And my observation of that is that just happens in a very different movement pattern than it does with men. And when we try to apply a feminine motion to a masculine problem, we get ourselves stuck, right? It kind of, to put that in RT language, oftentimes what I will hear is, to use an example, I hear a lot of wives talk about feeling out of control. And that looks like trying to micromanage and really be attentive. And again, I'm talking in umbrellas here, but trying to be attentive to changing and controlling the environment around, right? But then when I hear men talk about feeling out of control, it's a much more passive experience of their pain. And
like,
so
they don't have control anymore.
Like, they don't have control, they don't know what to do. So then we get all of the addictive withdrawal type behaviors, right? That's when we're stepping into drugs and porn and trying to find worth and value through work. But I often hear worth and value for men really intimately tied to this sense of out of control, right? And if we just address out of control, then we're missing the worth and the value piece.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're treating the symptom and not the problem at hand, right? So all of that to say, it's been really fascinating over the past 10 years to see how society has shifted in a direction that men are increasingly more eager to engage in emotional conversations.
Yeah.
And also feeling very out of water. And how the heck do I do this? What does it sound like? How am I heard? Right.
Yeah. It's, I'm curious for you, Rhett. I mean, you wrote the book on what it means to be a man. Like, you have tapped into this idea of like what it like, and I'm sure there's probably elements in there that you would probably want to rewrite. I think actually when you told me that you actually had written a whole bunch of stuff that was like turned away initially. But I'm curious, like, what even happens for you when you look at the plight of like emotions and men, and how do we, I think it's one thing to talk the problem, but another thing to how do we tap into the solution? Ryan talks about like giving bravery instead of creating safe spaces, giving places to flourish. What do you think?
Yeah, I was like listening to your guys' conversation with a lot of curiosity and actually encouragement, because I don't know, I'm in this place in my own practice where I work with lots of men and lots of young men, and I'm trying to figure out myself a solution, because I don't feel like I feel like a lot of good things can happen in the therapy room, One
Yeah.
thing I love about RT that's been helpful for me is even the simple thing of giving a guy a piece of paper with words on it and language to help them
Mhm.
identify how they feel, to learn how to express themselves so they can understand, like, yeah, that is how I feel. I didn't know that's how I felt. And to be able to use that to empower themselves and to communicate that in relationship with the people that they do life with, I found has been really critical. And trying to get them off the couch to do some experiential stuff. But where I'm stuck is I don't think it's enough to be in the therapy room. Like, and maybe we'll get into this because I'm interested, but the conversations I'm a part of right now are with men in therapy, and non-traditional therapy circles are getting men outdoors into wilderness, into space. Um, I think I was saying before we recorded that I'm a huge fan, or I did say it, Richard Rohr's book, like The Wild Man's Journey, and just I don't know. I'm rambling here, so I don't really know. Like, I feel like I haven't discovered the next evolution that I
Yeah.
feel like I want to take therapy to with the men that I work with. That may not make
Mm,
sense at all, but I'm going to leave it at that.
that's
It
fair.
makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I think you're hitting the nose on the head with. It's interesting. I've been talking recently of about this idea. I feel like I'm a therapist who is increasingly becoming more disillusioned by the practice of therapy because of exactly what you're saying, Rhett. The talking about our experience of life is helpful in a certain avenue, but really health, healing, wellness, that's an experience. That's not a conversation, right? And Red, I love your vision for how do we start getting meaningful groups of men to engage in an experience outside where it's embodied, where it's communal, where it's transformative, right? I think that is the big question. There's a bunch of groups that are starting to pop up that I've been keeping a pulse on that are doing that. um, and that's really encouraging to see people trying to do it, but it still feels like it's the Wild West and we're figuring it out as we go, right?
Hmm. And I'll say this too, like, it's some of the stuff we're talking about, I want to continue talking about men, but I was in a conversation with a bunch of women who are like, "Oh, I can't go to another women's conference and just listen to a speaker, especially in a church ministry setting. I can't do that." And the same thing guys were saying. And so there's like this hunger, I think, to experience something different. Like you said, it has to be experienced. And I think we work hard. I know Terry has tried really hard, and we try hard in our RT community. And Ryan, I know you do, and Lance, to be experiential within the
Yeah.
space that we have to get people to move and to shift.
Yeah.
But I am drawn to like stories, and I'm drawn to the wilderness story, that it's a 13-day journey technically on foot from um, slavery to the promised land, but yet it takes 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's something that we have to learn in that wilderness wandering that we can't learn
Yeah.
in a simple direct journey, or we can't learn in a space. And um, I don't know.
I love that you bring up the essentially that story of Exodus, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've really been dabbling a lot in that has accentuated my RT practice is this idea of mythic imagination, right? And essentially the idea that stories are storehouses. And I'm pulling a bunch of these ideas from Michael Meade and Robert Bly and James Hillman. But as we lean into learning how to abstract our story and put it in a metaphorical context, there's so much meaning and purpose and direction we can pull out of that, right?
Oh,
Like when
totally.
I think of what you're saying about Israel, that it's a 13-day journey, but they had to literally have an entire generation pass away before they grant access to the promised land. Well, the mythic imagination part of me jumps in as like, yeah, in order to find the promised land, what is that thing that we have to let go of? What's that part of us that has to die in order for us to step into healing, wholeness, a more robust life?
Yeah.
I love being able to take RT as kind of the groundwork of, this is how we're going to talk about emotional regulation. This is how we're going to understand your pain. And then how do we build a story that moves us closer to an experience, right? But all of that is so hard to do in the therapy context and in the sit and just talk room, basically. Right? I
Yeah.
have a lot of those similar questions you do, right?
Yeah.
How do we do this?
Lance, you know what this reminds me of a little
What does
bit?
it remind you of,
Well,
bro?
no, the
No,
work of
tell
Roy,
me. Bring it.
Baumeister.
Oh, we got Baumeister coming at
Well,
us.
when he's talking about virtue,
Yeah.
right, and Ryan's talking about emotional regulation, so this idea
Sure.
of like self-control. And one of the things he talks about, I'm going to not do him justice, but in one of his books, he talks about the importance of telos, which is meaning making. It's having a story,
Yeah.
you
An end.
know, and without, Ryan, like unless we have an end inside a telos, unless we're operating out of that virtue, that meaning making, it's hard to know what to step into experiential wise, And so I like your language of, here's the foundation of RT and helping with this emotional regulation piece. And for me, the peace cycle is about stepping into that emotional regulating truth, that virtue, and taking an action that connects with our telos, which connects with the story that we're trying to be. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, this is where we're even like this last weekend, we were kind of sitting talking about this idea about like stepping into calling more, like this idea of like knowing what we're made for. I think, and having this kind of journey set out ahead of us, I think makes a huge difference. And like, and even being, I have this shirt of mine. One of my favorite artists, his name is Jeremy Collins. Have you guys heard of him?
Not.
You have, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
No?
No,
Yeah.
I have. I'm not super familiar, but I recognize his name.
So Jeremy Collins he's a rock climber. So obviously I like that part of him. And he just does these amazing pencil drawings, but he has these like amazing sayings that to me are just like really speak to my heart. For instance, he says, he doesn't say, be careful out there. His shirt says, be dareful out there. It's this turn to say like, no, be daring, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
He's got this other, he's got to tell him, but one of my favorites, and I almost wore it at the intensive, or whatever we called it. We were doing, I don't even know what we called it last weekend, but it says, the pursuit, it's not the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit is happiness. And just finding oneself in the midst of the journey, and encouraging them to see themselves, to embrace themselves, this mindfulness element that we do in restoration therapy, that instead of being so disembodied that, like we do with escaping and all the others, being in control, to actually see yourself in the moment, to be with yourself, and to kind of enjoy the journey along the way. I mean, it's such a gift. I don't know if that's making sense.
It is. It really reminds me of the idea between my understanding behind RT is, hey, this is a strategy, this is a practice to help all of us regulate so that we can be present and embodied and conscious.
Yeah.
In the choices we make and the ways we relate to other people, to the things in our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that whole idea, what did you say? Dareful instead of careful, right?
Yeah, be dareful.
Dareful. I love that because that even connects back
He's
to
got
that.
it on his shirt
Look
there.
at you, just rocking it. Reminds me of that idea of creating brave space, right? Like,
Yeah.
safety doesn't do anything for us if safety exists outside of us, right? Like, I think the crux of RT is how do you create safety internally? Because the world outside of us is not safe.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I'm curious because, James Hillman, I started reading The Soul's Code,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some, and I could tell how lazy my brain has gotten over the years with some of the reading, and I had to really like dig into some stuff. So I'm interested in like your pivot to some of these depth psychologists, the work of Michael Meade or James Hillman. What led you kind of down that path?
Oof, that's a
Because it's not
the
mainstream,
story or the
I
long
mean,
story.
it's okay.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So we went to Fuller. It's very much a family systems approach to which makes sense for MFT, right? After Fuller, I picked up Carl Jung's The Red Book for a little light reading, and I don't
As
know
one
if you guys
does.
as one does. I don't know if you guys have spent a lot of time with that book, but it's this very fascinating journey where Jung is turning inward and essentially having conversations with his own soul, right? And tapping into the collective consciousness that's swimming around him in that time. And I remember I came across one of these quotes from him that essentially went something to the extent of, I didn't know the story I was living until I really understood my own mythology, right?
Mm.
And so Carl Jung was really my first stepping stone into the world of depth psychology. And from there, I discovered Hillman and Meade, and I brought Rohr with me into that because his mystic approach to life is really beautiful. But this idea really resonates with me that we're all living out our own stories and we're all here for some pretty specific reasons. And we kind of are shooting in the dark aimlessly until we can understand what is that thing that really is important to me and where do my gifts meet that thing that's important and how do I flush that out. So that led my creative interests, and I jumped into just on my own. I started reading a bunch of comparative religions, hit on all the major world religions, and was kind of doing a comparison of that, trying to look for the myths and the metaphors, and then that eventually led into fairy tales and hearth stories, which then led into all of the epic myths out there. And so I've been really dabbling in this world of, I don't know, where spirituality and psychology and philosophy and theology all intersect.
Mm-hmm.
That came to a head where in my personal story, there's just a lot of grief, a lot of loss. I joke around often, and you guys are familiar with the ACE score, the adverse childhood experiences. I joke around and say my life was so normal until I took an ACE test and realized that I have 10 out of the 11 before the age of 18, and then my adult life just followed suit. Right, I find myself with people in chaos, with people in crisis often. So has been a very consistent initiation by depth of my life. So that just has gone hand in hand, right? If you feel like you're drowning all the time, then Richard Rohr, Breathing Underwater, I think is the book. He opens with that poem, learning how to breathe underwater. That has very much felt akin to my experience. So the more I've dabbled with that and allowed myself to explore that, the more I have really begun to value the depth psychology approach. The great problem with this that I run into is if I use the imagery of the ocean, when I'm hanging out at the bottom of the ocean, it's really hard to communicate in a concise, succinct way. So then I like float up and I'm trying to run a business and I'm like, how the F do I talk about my perfect avatar, or like, what is my marketing strategy? I don't know. Right. Like it's a very dichotomous world we find ourselves in.
Yeah, it goes from the ridiculous to the sublime quite quickly.
Yeah. But all of that stuff transitioned from an intellectual experiment to a very embodied practical thing in September 22, 23. I did a heroic dose of psilocybin, and it was like my first venture into mushrooms. And I had this really profound ego death, dying, kind of being pulled into, like, I could paint the whole picture for you, but it was something out of Dante's Inferno, where like my soul leaves my body, gets wrapped up by this like giant monster spider, and I get drugged down through the depths of hell into the center of the earth. And I'm having this like extreme fear, extreme anxiety, like physically my body, like I'm on the floor huddled up in the fetal position, just buried myself in some blankets for probably 7-8 hours. And at the peak of that, where I'm feeling myself kind of asking the question, have I gone too far? Am I ever going to come back from this? I deeply understand why people have psychotic breaks in situations like this, because it was gnarly. But in the depth of that, I heard my body calling out to my soul, and this mothering archetype was really coming out of me, of then nurturing for the next couple hours of the trip, nurturing my soul back into my body. And you guys, I have in the therapy space talked about the need for self-compassion, talked about the ways we can practice self-love. Until that experience, I had never truly experienced caring for myself in a meaningful way. And that was the kind of the catalyst for me to really think, oh, there's something to this depth work, and there's something needed about really sinking to the depths and feeling and experiencing our pain and our grief, so that we can also then learn how to show up for ourselves and care for ourselves in the midst of our pain. It was a wild experience.
What do you think? What was that message from the mother self inside of you? Like, what was the thing that you were discovering as you were kind of, I don't know if you mind tapping into this, but just curious for you.
It's hard to describe. The closest I can get is it's that feeling of holding your baby for the first time.
Yeah.
And you just love that little person. And there's no rational thought to it. It's just a full body warmth, tenderness, care, right? And I felt that for my kids, obviously. But to be able to really embody that and feel that towards myself was a profound game changer in my life, in my practice, in my family. It's been really cool.
What would, like, it's profoundly cool. Like, tell me about like that dynamic of when you hold yourself for the first time and you see yourself, freshly
Mm.
produced into the world. Um, and you're looking at that little rye guy. That's what I like to imagine you saying to yourself. I don't know if you actually did that. That's what I would do. Um, uh, like, what is it that when you're looking at him, that's, you know, like, like that I just see it. I'm there with you in the moment. Like you're there under, you know, amidst the seven blankets, and the seven layers of hell and all the like. There's this like calling inside of your
Yeah.
soul, that motherly call. That's
Yeah.
that you're called to be held.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I have to answer this in parallel. That was also my first experience of internally creating safety for myself, right? Because I was still very high and having all of these auditory, um, like what it felt like for me is my visual senses, my auditory senses, my physical senses were jacked up to 500. And I was just so overstimulated and overwhelmed in my own body. And to
Mhm.
be that overwhelmed and then find that part of me that is like, hey, life is really hard. Like, that's a
Yeah.
truth. And also, you are really beautiful. And this journey is definitely worth it. Right. And to
Mm.
have both truths happening simultaneously, like fully feeling how hard and overwhelming life is.
Yeah.
And practically in my story, I was still stuck in some really deep grief around losing our first kid and how
Mm.
that really caused a lot of pain in my marriage, and I was stuck in that space. And so I went on this psilocybin trip with this idea of I need to let go of some of this. I need to process some of this. I kind of want to meet God. And it just, like, all of the hard of my life culminated in that moment, in my body, in my emotion, in my spirit. And also, I'm hearing the birds chirp because of the impact of the psilocybin. I'm seeing light as a curtain, and it's beautiful.
Mm.
And I'm tracing my tattoos on my arm, and with so much tenderness and love towards myself. It was fascinating to hold both the depth of our suffering and the beauty of the world all
Mm.
at once. And so all of that kind of got embodied and directed towards myself of, I am this experience of life, and this experience is amazing, and I love that. I love me. Right? Like,
Yeah.
hearing myself say it right now doesn't come close to the actual felt experience.
Is the felt
It
experience
was,
like louder? Is it more like ginger? Like, what is the moment like that you're missing that we're not getting via the radio waves, whatever they are? I don't know what the waves are.
so think of, that's a great question. Think of, to use a fancy word, think of any time you've experienced the numinous, right? Like those mountaintop experiences that you had with God, where it was just so divine,
Mhm.
right? And we all have flecks of that. It was that. It was
Mm.
it was one of the pinnacle divine moments of my life.
Mm.
Uh, Maybe kind of like Moses on the mountaintop with the burning bush, being like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed to be in your presence, and also I'm in your presence."
Yeah. I kind of think of my daughter. We were watching Prince of Egypt the other day with her. Just be
Great
full
flick.
circle. We're like Jennifer and I were like my wife. We're like going through Exodus right now. So I'm like with you guys
Fun,
100% right
fun.
now. Um, but the there's like that moment where the music comes on. And it's like the bush is burning. My daughter like turns around, and goes, "Whoa!" like just like totally in the
Yeah.
flow of it all, of like,
Yeah.
dude, that is crazy, bro. So I'm with you in
Yeah.
that element of like, I like me. Like
Yeah.
I like me. I see me. I like me. You can hear like the birds chirping as you're doing
Mhm.
it, and the flow of the, yeah. I'm with you then.
Well, and what's so cool about that is when
Hopefully it is. I don't know.
no, it is. It's like that. And when I think about the peace cycle, to bring it back to what you were saying a little bit ago, Rhett, I think when therapeutically, when we do the pain cycle well, and when we really make the peace cycle an experiential thing,
Yeah.
I think that there's an element of that. Whoa, what the heck? I am so cool. I am worth this work, or I am worth risking to disrupt this part of my life for the sake of the bigger story of where I'm headed.
So true.
Yeah,
I we won't even have time for this today, but like I have a real, like, as Lance is unpacking this, I have like a real practical question for you too, because you know you're the first actually to bring up psychedelics on this podcast, essentially, and all I know is a growing conversation in most of the communities that I work in terms of like colleagues, first of all, and then people coming into my office, you know, and and I don't know if you can put it succinctly, but what was your shift even to say I'm going to go down this route? You know, because
Mm,
there's a lot of discussion around this, and some people will choose to do this, many won't as well. But it's all
mhm.
around us. It exists, and it's happening in all our therapeutic communities. And so, and as someone for you who's practicing and experienced it, what was that like? Okay, I'm going to do this.
Mm,
And again, I know that's for a longer conversation, but
yeah.
I wanted to bring that up because I'm curious.
Um, that's a great question. And for anyone who wants a little bit more of context to this, one of my good friends, Simon Uliger, wrote this book, Psychedelics and the Soul. It's a great read. He takes a depth psychology approach to it. He's a really cool guy, and he teaches clinicians how to ethically and practically engage with this type of content. So a little plug for Simon there, but um, there was no, the way things tend to work in my life. There's generally not very many defining definitive moments. It's more of kind of a long, steady current in a direction. So so for me to start dabbling with psychedelics, we had just come out of the pandemic. I had lost a baby. We had just had another baby. I was doing 40 to 50 client hours a week in private practice. There was not a lot of space for me to take care of my grief and my pain, right?
Mm.
And things were just getting sticky, right? Like the way that would play out at work is I would notice myself saying the right thing with clients, but effectively just totally missing the mood. I would be much more matter of fact. I got myself fired a couple times because I was just a little too blunt, without the emotional tending, because I wasn't tending to myself, right? And I was just so stuck. There's this story that Michael Meade talks about, essentially where some brothers are trying to find a healing for the kingdom, and the first two brothers run themselves into a slot canyon, and they just keep going straight, thinking that it's going to work out without ever assessing the situation, and they get themselves stuck. That's what my experience was.
Mm-hmm.
I was so stuck, and I didn't know what to do, and there wasn't room to turn around. And so that was right around the time where psychedelics were really starting to take off. I had taken a couple trainings in them take off in the therapeutic realm. So I had done a couple trainings in them. And then my personality is just a full send. Like, let's just jump and do it. So I did it.
You said you're a man of extremes earlier, kind of all or nothing, huh?
Yeah, I am. It's really fun and gets me into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
As you could imagine.
I can kind of imagine that. I can see that happening. Yeah. Yeah,
There's
I'm sure.
A lot, yeah, it's a lot of unpacking. You know, like I said, this will have to. We would need to do lay you down on the couch here and do like a 4-hour session unpacking all of it. It's just a huge mixture of like theological background, ministry, trauma, grief, like all the integrative pieces. I'm thinking of, like you said, psychology and philosophy and lived experience. Just all, it's just really fascinating to me, you know, just like, but it's a culmination really of that long journey of all those things intermingling over time.
Yeah.
And again, this is my shtick against therapy, is all of those things in the absence of practiced experience just results in anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Because and that's why I named my practice praxis, because it requires a practice. Like I forget who said it, but somewhere along the lines I heard, our practice teaches us where to stand and how to stand when the world gets uncertain. So we have to have a right practice, right? And the downfall of therapy is it's become such a logical, rational talk experiment that we dramatically lack experience. And that's what I love so much about Terry. It's funny. It's one thing to watch other people do RT, and then it's a totally other thing to watch Terry do RT, because he just hits the nail on the experience head so well. Right?
Absolutely.
He really makes your pain felt in the room, and then he really helps you transition into the experience of peace.
Do you have a good Terry story? We're always looking for a good Terry story.
I mean, the first thing, he would not want me to say this, but the first thing that comes to mind is Terry taught our human sexuality class. And I just get this image of him standing in the middle of class, wiggling like a sperm, because it fit the context of what he was talking about. But Terry being silly is always funny to me.
That's a good. You can say good Terry impersonation there. You moving around like.
I like when he has the when he has the orgasms happening up in your head.
Oh gosh.
But I think you're nailing it down. I mean, this is like, to me, like the things of restoration therapy that we do when we are like classic. I think you need to change your verbiage, by the way, Ryan, because I think therapy is still necessary. I just think classic therapy is bullshit. Like we're navel gazing and we're not flowing enough. Sorry to use the cuss word. We have explicit on our thing.
How dare you, Lance?
But I do think like classic therapy gets us it doesn't work. And especially for men where this is lived experience, where we really need to step into the fullness of the things that are going on. If we're just talking, that's all we're doing. To get someone to stand up and to wrestle, to put them on the floor, to have them move and shift and find themselves in the midst of their pain or the freedom of their healing in the peace cycle. That to me is the best. That is therapeutic. The rest is just like navel gazing and talking.
Yeah.
And that is the quintessential thing that with restoration therapy that we get to do. Yeah. That we get to call them into the fullness of who they are. Nothing more, nothing less. So I think, you know, classic therapy be damned. It made the praxis flow. You know, Rhett
That,
and I. There it is. I knew you were doing it.
yes, that professor at Fuller, Ray Anderson, who was really the first professor at Fuller to kind of come over and do some classes in the school of psychology.
Psychology, yeah.
Uh, Ministry is theology is dead unless it's practiced,
Yeah.
you know. And so he talked about praxis all the time. Like it's unless
talking
there's
about
an
praxis?
yeah,
Talking about praxis?
unless there's an
Not talking about a game.
No, I just yeah. It has to be. Everything has to be practiced, and it's rooted in theory. And but if we're just talking about it, and ministry was kind of dead to me until he made ministry come alive because of the shape of practicing the theology that I was reading. And the same thing with therapy. I think I was trained I didn't train under Terry. I had great professors at Fuller and stuff, but my practicum site, you know, and things like that, it was a lot of just sitting and listening, and which I'm a good listener, but it gets boring after a while when you can't move people along it. And I think we're talking about men, especially, you know, men get bored in the office really quickly if you're just sitting and into intellectualizing.
Yeah.
You know,
the imagery that I use so often with the couples that I work with is, you know, this old way. And Lance, I really appreciate that amendment to how I talk about this, because you're hitting the nail on the head there. But this old way of teaching really is a lot like trying to teach someone to drive a car by having them do the written exam and do 10,000 hours of, okay, when do you turn your high beams on? What speeds what? How do you do it? But you never actually get behind the wheel, right? And if you learn the nuance of all of those things without ever getting behind the wheel, then the first time you get behind the wheel, you're going to be terrified, right? Because you're anxiously running through all the rules, the regulations. What do you do in these conditions? What do you do in those conditions? Versus, I mean, I learned to drive as like 11-year-old, and
as one does.
As one does, a myriad of different vehicles, and before I knew any of the rules, I knew how the thing worked. I knew how to operate it, right? And I think that's what we're running into in our therapy spaces with men often, is by the time they're coming, in my experience, by the time they're coming in my door, they know a bunch of rules on what they're not allowed to say. They know a bunch of things that they are supposed to know, but they don't know how to implement. And so they're just sitting there terrified, right? And most of my work is with high conflict couples. And oftentimes the dude is sitting there while his partner is sharing some beautiful, painful thing. And then he's just so stoic. And it's not that he doesn't want to engage, it's he literally doesn't know how to do it without getting in trouble, or afraid that he's going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And so that's that imagery for me of like, oh, you're sitting behind the steering wheel. All you got to do is push the gas a little bit and see how the thing reacts. But you're so afraid to do that because of all the things you know that could go wrong. Right.
It just goes wild in my brain.
Well, it's like I was thinking about, Lance, you rock climbing. I mean, you can read about all day long, and you could actually, I guess, practice even in a rock climbing gym a lot too. But to get out in the wild and to actually do it for yourself the first time,
yeah,
you know,
when you're on your fourth,
you don't know.
When you're on your fourth pitch, so you're 600 feet in the air, and you're sitting there with your buddy, and you're pulling a rope up, and it's like you're attached to the wall, and you're switching your device, and your device slips out of your hand, and you watch it tumble down half dome, and you're like, shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's my thing that I used to help you get up and down. I don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Now I have to improvise and figure out what do I do now? And I mean, I'm glad I sat and read the books because I would have known how to do the munter knot properly, to make sure I was safe and secure. But to actually be there and use it was like amazing. Like, I know there's a moment where you're like, oh, this is scary as all get out. I just
Mhm.
watched something that is supposed to save my life, like fall to the peril of where my life would go. So yeah, absolutely, rock climbing. It's one of those things of once you're on the rock, all things change.
Well, and to build on that story, Lance, I didn't say this, but was a big climber before kids as well.
Yeah,
Um,
before kids, the museum.
yeah, museums. I have thousands of feet of rope that are just sitting stagnant. um, but in order for you to not lose your shit on the wall 600 feet off the deck like that, one, you had to have some prep. You read the manuals, you've had some
Yeah.
practice, you had some intellectual knowledge. More important than that, though, is you climbed a whole heck of a lot before that. So, although you're in a scary situation, you're able to lean back on trusting that you show up well in scary situations.
Mm.
And I think that is
Wait,
the
say that
piece
again.
that
I need to absorb that for a second. Say it again.
being able to, when you're in a scary situation, being able to trust because of past experiences that you've had, that you can show up in a meaningful way in that scary situation is, I think, something that especially younger men that I find coming into my office really lack. Like there's it's just, again, the experiential piece. We live in a
Yeah,
world that is so, for good and for bad,
disembodied.
highly intellectualized
Yeah.
and very skills driven, but we lack experience in almost everything we're doing these days. And when you lack experience but you have knowledge, you don't trust yourself to implement the knowledge, so you panic, you freak out. I took a group of, this is a poor life choice, back in undergrad, I took a group of 8 dudes out climbing to uh, Joshua Tree. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. We're stuck on the summit at like 5 in the morning. We had to do the whole night out there. Had to cut the rope 3 different times. It was a
Oh my
mess.
god.
It was a
Which
mess.
which zone were you climbing in?
Oh, where were we? Um, we were in
Sounds like
Jumbo
one
Rock
horse.
area.
Which one?
Jumbo Rocks area.
Oh, jump rocks. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, and we started at like 9 in the morning, so we're all in shorts and tank tops, not expect like 2 headlamps between all of us. It was a mess, but it was interesting because I have been in scary situations in the backcountry like that. So I was feeling how uncomfortable it was, but I knew we were going to be fine. And then the people that I brought with didn't have those experiences. And so they're existentially like, oh my God, I'm going to die out here. I'm going to freeze to death. Right. Uh, and I'll think about that often when I'm with clients of, oh, you're going through something really hard. Do you know how to trust yourself that you'll show up and come through? Or are you having to step out on a branch of faith and
Mm.
believe yourself into your growth? And that's a big difference.
Mm.
But
Dude.
You guys, we're gonna have. I hate to say it, we're gonna have to end the
it is
combo
time.
because I'm gonna go work with a client now, and now I'm gonna sit in my chair and think about how I need to move into practice. But this, it
Practice.
just, I want to circle back at some point because this gets back even to how we start talking about men's work and the lack of rituals and initiations and rites for young boys in our culture today that help them gain the experience to navigate difficult terrain. And we don't have that. And I think about you two being really great guides, to come alongside men and say, hey, I've been there before. I can help you navigate this.
Yeah.
When it gets scary, I'll help you, you know, get through this difficult situation.
Yeah.
That's
No
the cool
doubt.
thing about this work. Yeah.
Bravery.
Mhm.
Yeah. I tell men all the time, just even stepping in this office is an act of bravery. Some guys have never been, and it's just scary to come in and talk to another guy.
Yeah.
You know,
Love it.
Mhm.
Ryan. Man, there's a lot. Lance and I will be chewing on this for a while. I'm going to put all the show notes in and links to your website. Anything else where people could find you that you recommend, or is just putting your website down good?
Yeah, website's great. I have pretended like I want to have an Instagram presence, on again, off again. I don't want to have an Instagram presence. That world depletes me. So website is great.
Cool.
Good stuff.
Well, you guys, it was an honor and a joy to hang out with the two of you today. Thanks for having me on. Really grateful for you both and the work you guys are doing.
Thanks, man.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Ryan. Good stuff, guys.